Hey everybody, Jason Blaha here with Ice Cream Fitness. Today I want to do something a little different than I've done in most of my previous videos, but hold on, let me give you guys a bicep shot first. Alright, back to the subject matter at hand. I want to do something a little different today. In most of my previous videos, they have mostly been, only informative. I've discussed topics, delivered information. Um, but what I would like to start doing at this point, and then I'll get feedback from you guys and see what you guys think and if you enjoy it or not. I'm going to start demonstrating and discussing lifts and sometimes of the history of lifts, the proper execution, how to get the most out of them, their uses. And what I'm going to do is just film some of my personal training, my actual training, so that you guys can watch how I personally perform these movements and how I advise doing them. And I will break down why I do different things. And these will be actual work sets rather than sometimes these demonstrations of textbook perfect form that people do with, very, very light weights. I'm going to actually just video my actual training. I videoed quite a few lifts from today's full body session, which was, a higher volume, higher rep workout. And so today's topic, what I want to cover is one of my favorite mass builders and strength builders, the floor press. And the floor press, it was actually the original chest builder. Um, decades ago, prior to the advent of actual benches for people to do bench presses on, guys just laid on the floor and did floor presses with a barbell. And it was the original chest builder, and guys had to learn how to make it work for their chest and developing their chest delts and triceps. Um, it's also, today, it's a very, very popular lift among powerlifters and strength athletes, and a big part of that is because the floor press translates very well into bench press strength, and it is considered one of the favorite bench press accessories by competitive powerlifters and even by a number of strength athletes and football players and things. However, there is also some data, EMG studies, actually showing that the floor press executed correctly can be a superior movement and cause extremely good and oftentimes better recruitment of the middle portion of the pectoralis major than the actual flat bench does. And I'm not sure, but I think in some studies it even performed right up there with dumbbells. And at first that might seem somewhat counterintuitive because the range of motion could be a little limited at the bottom, but when you look at the fact that some of these studies were done on slightly more advanced athletes with thicker backs and things who therefore had a better range of motion on this lift, and that you're forced if you're a larger individual like that, you're forced to explode from a dead stop and immediately contract your chest and drive a weight forward with it from a dead stop with no cheating, no ability to use leg drive, no ability to use your lats or anything else to get the weight moving, which is one advantage the floor press has over both dumbbell and barbell chest presses in that you have the ability to remove the capacity of other muscles to take over. And like for me, I do both, but I do bench press more as a power movement personally, and I use floor press right now as my primary pec builder. And for me, I personally feel it a little more in my pecs, and again, part of the reason for that being uh, that I'm forced to explode with my pecs from a dead stop, and I'm not able to engage my lats to slingshot the weight out of the bottom like I can on a bench press. I can't use any leg drive, and you're forced to just press from a dead stop. And what you will find happening with the floor press is that you will find the weak link in your basically your pressing chain, whether it's your delts, your triceps, your pecs. It's going to find your limiting factor because you have no way to use inertia to get the bar moving, and so therefore you're pretty much going to be limited by those three muscles, and whichever of those is the weakest is what's going to be your weak link. Now, you will notice it's a lot of guys claim that they do not feel the floor press in their chest so much, and it feels like a delt and a tricep movement for them. And what I would point out is that oftentimes for those individuals, sometimes it's a case of just limb length ratios and things, which makes it difficult for some people to really engage their chest on it, or an issue if their back is just too small and they can't get the last few inches at the bottom, last couple inches, because they just don't have enough meat on their backs to get there before they come to a dead stop. So that can be an issue for some, and then others, they simply don't know how to execute the movement. So what I'm going to do for you guys is show you 3 of my work sets from my session this morning, and I'll be progressively ramping the weight up on those because they're actual work sets, and they're sets of 8 reps. So I mean moderately heavy. I mean not anywhere near my maxes, but moderately heavy, just basically hypertrophy work. And it'll give you guys an idea of how I execute it, and I will break down step by step the different processes as I go. So first, let me go ahead and just show you guys one set so that you can kind of see my basic execution of the movement. Okay, a couple things you probably noted in that is that first of all, you notice it just like on a power bench, and this is again the safe way to perform any sort of press. You'll notice that I press the bar fairly low to my chest, below the nipple line, which you should have your hands at that point, whether you're dumbbell pressing or barbell pressing. It should not be optional. You should never be up here. And you should always be tucked, and even if you're using dumbbells, you probably shouldn't hold them at a 90-degree angle. You should probably have them the wrist pronated just a bit so that you can bring them down lower, and you can avoid putting shearing stress on the rotator cuff. And then of course it allows you to tuck your elbows. You'll notice I have quite a bit of elbow tuck at the bottom, and so that's one thing that should be immediately obvious. Also, you'll note that my chest and back are thick enough that the bar comes within 1 inch of my chest at the bottom. So for me, it is pretty much almost a full range of motion movement. One of the other things you'll notice here again when you look at it in the next video, once I'm set up there and doing that, and you can see my bar path, you'll notice that for me it's a very controlled eccentric, because you'll find this movement almost forces you to control the eccentric, because if you try to drop or bounce, it fucking hurts. If you have any appreciable amount of weight and you let it just drop and your elbows hit the floor, it's going to hurt. So it's almost a self-correcting movement and forcing you to control the eccentric rep, which is very good for hypertrophy. And the other thing you'll notice is that I pause. I let any bounce or whatever come to a complete rest at the bottom. And once the weight is completely stopped moving and I'm at a dead stop, I explode and I press it as explosively and quickly as possible. There's nothing slow. It's a complete explosive movement. And again, you'll notice that I lock it as quickly as possible and then immediately come back down. So I don't try to hold it at the top. I just go right back into the rep. I allow my pause to happen at the bottom. Once I've had a controlled negative, get to the bottom, explode up. So here, if you watch my next set, you can watch for those things as you watch as I execute it. Okay, now what I want to highlight, now that you've seen those points that I just raised and then observed those in the second video and my second set, I would like to point out my setup itself. I show you in the third video, I show you how I actually set the movement up, and you will notice a couple of things. You will notice that I get in under the bar when I get under it, and I get in really tight. I get my scapula completely retracted. I pull myself up on the bar, and I get a little bit of an arch, just like you would on a power bench in it. And what I'm doing with that is that I'm pulling my lats back and my scapula back as tightly as possible to do a couple of things. One, just like with any other sort of chest movement, having the scapula completely retracted allows you to put a deeper stretch on the pec, which will allow you to feel this movement a little more in your chest at the bottom, just like you would on any other press, which, again, for people who claim they don't feel this movement in their chest, that is possibly part of the problem. And the other thing I do with that is I get a little bit of an arch so that I'm really set up on my traps and lats really hard, particularly on my traps. With my scapula completely retracted, the meat in the traps is pushed further back in and the lats, and then what I do is I set up on top of that. So that allows me to get a slightly deeper stretch and range of motion at the bottom, so that as when I'm pressing from the dead stop, which is again the merit of the floor press, that I have just another inch or two of range of motion in the bottom to really, really engage my pecs harder. Again, making it a very, very effective movement for chest hypertrophy. And then again, you'll notice I execute it pretty much the same way as the others. Obviously, this is a little heavy for me. This is getting close to failure for me, this particular set for 8 reps. But again, this is definitely a true work set, and I'm definitely putting effort into it. And so again, if you'll go ahead and watch that one. And again, you've noted in that one, it's the same thing. I got set up tight. I set up in the manner I described, have my scapula completely retracted. I'm set back tight on my traps with a little bit of an arch. The other thing you'll notice there too is that I put my legs completely straight once I'm set up. And again, that's to remove the ability to use leg drive so that I'm forced to do all the reps exclusively with the primary movers. The pecs, the anterior delts, and the triceps are the primary movers, and I'm not allowing myself the ability to cheat. And you'll notice in that again also it's a completely controlled eccentric, which again is something you should be looking for hypertrophy work. It's a pause at the bottom, about an inch off of my chest to a half inch off my chest, a pause at the bottom, but a dead stop, then an explosive concentric. And that's pretty much the history and uses of the floor press. This is how I personally execute it. You'll notice I don't really include it in things like novice routines and such because, again, I feel the novice should focus a little more on the barbell bench. And I see this as more useful for individuals who perhaps their bench press is starting to stall. They can't make linear gains on their bench press anymore, and they have enough meat on their backs to actually get a little deeper range of motion. When someone reaches that point, I feel that the floor press can be a very, very useful accessory movement for the bench press, and it can become a tremendously useful movement for overall hypertrophy and chest hypertrophy. And I hope this was informative. Let me give you guys another bicep shot. And I'll talk to you next time.